So why write a book on connectivations? People, machines, companies, governments connected in many more ways than we ever imagined. Not only to create value, but those of you who've probably heard us talk about it ad nauseum, to capture value as well. It's innovating in the business model. A lot of companies now doing what they call value constellations as opposed to value chains. You know, in the Michael Porter days, Michael's office was right next to mine over at Monitor. You know, it was all about the value chain. And in the last few years, it's moved to this kind of value constellation, which is more a systems view of how value exchanges, not just money, but how value exchanges take place between various parties in the value constellation, both within your company and outside your company. And when you begin to look at the system like that and those connections, it opens up a whole new range of potential business models in terms of who you partner with, how value gets exchanged, what the win-win gives-gets are between various people, whether they're formal connections or informal connections. If you don't have the kind of path greased or whatever they say, you're never going to get to market in time. So this whole question of connecting in a system is really essential to here. We felt it was important to stimulate a lot of ideas, basically stimulate them through how different companies are looking at different kinds of connections. So obviously many institutions are connected by being available anytime, everywhere, from forever, whether it's Roman aqueducts or radio or delivery or McDonald's or catalogs or religion. You look kind of in 1,000 years ago, you look in the 1900s, you look today. Everybody has been continually innovating in the sense of how do they connect. It's just that what's happened now is the ability to connect globally, anytime, anywhere, has just been kind of increased 1,000-fold. So now everybody's figuring out how to be always available, anywhere, anytime. And that's what the essence of this book was about, is kind of to explore that paradigm about how, what the business or change opportunities are around kind of that significant shift in how people are managing their business and how people are managing their lives. So everybody has to have a new name, right? Eric's book was called Socialnomics, not social economics, but socialnomics. So we call this Connectivate, another kind of word that Webster's would have a conniption about. Doesn't exist, but we thought it captured the kind of convergence, obviously, of innovation and connection. So we call it Connectivate. New ways of connecting people, machines, and organizations to both create and capture value. And that's important, to both create and capture value. So that's the working definition. We studied companies that met the following criteria. So all the stories, and lots, as I said, lots were contributed by health students worldwide. It had to be a company that had innovated to make something available all the time and or everywhere. And a lot of companies were doing both simultaneously. It had to dramatically improve access to people, products, services, or experiences. It had to create fundamental change. It had to be disruptive to at least its industry, if not beyond. And it had to have a sustainable business model that made money. This is back to the capture value. So the connection had to be a way to kind of expedite that value exchange. Again, not always money. It could have been strategic value. It could have been anything. But it was definitely value. And it had to be the first, the best, or have the most impact. Because once something's done, obviously there's going to be a lot of competitors, whether it's Facebook, Twitter, et cetera, et cetera. There's going to be people who try to repeat or tweak the model. So those were the criteria. We had about 150 stories that we wrote up, of which we picked 54, whatever there are, 54, 55 stories that we thought were compelling enough to be published kind of in the book. And here are the companies. So there's the usual suspects that we had to include. You can't write a book like this without at least saying that eBay exists, Facebook exists. So those organizations are all in there, but you'll see some that actually I only learned about through this and then used. Airbnb, some of you may have used it. It's people kind of renting out their spare bedroom in various cities in the world. Quirky, which you may have seen, but a lot of these were companies, frankly, I had not known a lot about until we wrote the book and until kind of you guys submitted them as examples. So these are the examples we wrote about. They're not intended to be, we're not saying these are the top 55. These are just companies that all took a different perspective. They wore a different set of glasses as they looked at what Connectivate could mean for their business. So just if I can quickly summarize insights from the book so that we can kind of get to the panel discussion. There's 7 kind of, everybody has to have 7, 8, 9, 10. There's 7 types of connectivations that we identified as we looked at all these stories. So I want to kind of mention what those are. The second kind of insight, obviously, is that companies can have, 2 people, as the one at the bottom says, in a sense, and you can all of a sudden have access to the entire world. So you don't have to have, Luciana's not here yet, she's from Natura, she's on the panel, but they have 1 million sales consultants, they call them dedicated, almost evangelical supporters of Natura in Brazil and Argentina and Chile. And so that helps a lot, but you don't even have to have that. There's so many ways you can get to market worldwide without having to have the kind of feet on the ground. Customers' expectations are dramatically different. They now expect to get anything they want, anywhere, anytime. Connectivations are ones that we feel really stop the competition and wow customers. Whether it's first to market or other things, they really kind of are a wake-up call to both the customer and the competitor. And the business impact has to be something that is significant, kind of a 10x business impact. So the 7 types, quickly, some do obviously more than one of these things, but they're all aimed at allowing companies to be always available. So you can broaden your base of customers. You could be like life or like, but that's kind of the whole kind of virtual sense of connecting and making it kind of real to everybody, providing protection, kind of security protection, building an effective ecosystem, kind of moving things and people around, simplifying search, and trusted transactions. So those were the common themes we found across companies, people kind of connecting to achieve some kind of combination of these things. So broadening the base, obviously examples, Facebook and Salesforce.com are probably the most known, eHarmony obviously as well, just to broaden the base of customers and trusted transactions among those customers. Effective ecosystems that allow you to have partners or transactions between partners in ways to kind of simplify the search to find them. P&G has done that through their Connect and Develop program. Quirky, obviously, that's their whole business model. Companies are making offerings more lifelike. And Nintendo gaming, obviously, all the gamification that's going on. But even companies as mature and kind of old industry as Sherwin-Williams, where you can now, put up a photo and paint your room and paint it 15 different colors and textures before you get it like you really want it and have to go out and buy the paint. So it can be as mundane as painting a room or painting a house, but very industrial, traditional companies have found ways to kind of tap into the connectivation, personalization, customization that they can achieve with this. So companies are becoming movers. They move things usually efficiently, providing protection, broadening their base. Big Belly Solar I mentioned at the beginning. I love, just as an example, FedEx is obviously the more traditional example of somebody who has having capitalized this Box.com. It's just kind of a more recent kind of virtual version of that. Protection, providing protection beyond kind of physical boundaries. So OnStar was obviously one of the first out of GM. JCI trying to kind of manage security kind of between the car and the home. Lifeline, as we said, at Philips, but all these are kind of geared to providing protection, simplifying search. You know, I think most anybody who's done business with China is familiar with Alibaba, but all of these are essentially Google's obviously the master of search, but all of these are built on search engine. TripAdvisor is actually based right here in Boston and Newton, and they then bought virtualtourist.com, so there's this kind of agglomeration of companies around how to connect in different industries. It creates interesting competition even for companies here like Go Ahead Tours. Again, trusted transactions. LinkedIn is probably one of the kind of most rapidly growing ones, as Eric had in his video, just in terms of a person joining every second to kind of connect employers with people looking for jobs, but also professionals having similar issues that they want to address, and all the communities of interest that LinkedIn creates. Obviously, the harmony on the kind of personal side of those trusted transactions. So for each example, kind of we extracted the voice of 4 key types of stakeholders to see how they kind of viewed the innovation. So it was the customer, it was the investor, the competitor, and the company. So each of the stories, it kind of looks at the company from these 4 perspectives to see kind of how it made a difference. So we tried to do it in a way that didn't put you to sleep after you read the 4th one, but so it does have a common template just so that we could get all the stories out there and have a reasonably level playing field, but hopefully one that's still alive as you read. So Sabina was our editor for much of this and was very helpful in trying to make sure they didn't, the first one sounded really good. If you wrote the second one and it began to be, just replace the words, it didn't work very well. So we tried to keep it as alive as we could, but still keep it simple and 2-page kind of format. So during the rest of this, I'd just like you to ask the following questions. Kind of what's your aha for kind of connecting? What do you expect kind of your customers to say? What can you do to stop copycats, and what kind of result can you expect? Whether it's your company you work for, your company you used to work for, your company you're going to work for, I think these are all questions that are kind of worth thinking about as we go forward. So quickly, those 4 things. The aha, it's usually around my company can appear much larger than I really am. It's kind of broadening that footprint, giving people what they want even before they ask for it, breaking it into smaller pieces so you can get to lots of different market segments easily, obviously getting to market faster and easier, and finding a market for everything. The second one around the customer experience, I expect to get anything I want from anywhere at any time, and I expect to be the process easy, simple, and for it to make me look good in front of my boss. So these are that kind of experiences, whether it's in the B2B or B2C world, is really kind of an important thing that I think take away from all of these. The third one, the competitor voice, they stop us. They wow the customers by doing multiple new and different activities across the value chain. So that was a kind of a common insight across all of these in terms of what the competitor view was of the impact this had on them. Business impact, some of the companies are small, some of the companies are huge, but all of them had kind of, just as they kind of poo-pooed social media 10 years ago or 15 years ago, in terms of its business impact. People originally thought this was, a social impact, but not a business impact. And I think what they found is it probably has more of a business impact than any of the technological breakthroughs or product breakthroughs they've had in the last 20 years. This has had more of an impact on their company, on the company's relationship with customers and suppliers. And so it truly is kind of 10x relative to what companies have been able to achieve with kind of